Welcome to this presentation on OpenAI and ChatGPT text processing. You've probably by now done text generation using ChatGPT or even maybe the OpenAI API. Text processing is different. With text processing, we can start to evaluate some given text. We can rewrite a page. We can do sentiment analysis on a page. We can translate a page to a different language. We can correct grammar. We can do much, much more. We'll take a look at that in this video. I'm Dr. Chris Jameson, and we put together a series of videos on OpenAI and the ChatGPT API. So please click subscribe to get access to all the videos. And let's go ahead and jump in. The source code for what we're going to review comes from my book, OpenAI and ChatGPT Programming, which is available. The book presents over 50 applications that use the API for real-world applications. The next wave in AI is going to be the integration of artificial intelligence into our own programs. So again, you probably used ChatGPT to generate text. I'm asking ChatGPT for an email message to my boss explaining why I was late to today's meeting. And ChatGPT quickly obliges and gives me a great excuse. This is text generation, and it's really common. We're going to be looking at text processing, which will maybe take my first excuse and have ChatGPT rewrite it. So we're going to be looking at an application called form generation, which is available in the book. And at the end of the video, I'll be giving you a link to the source code, so you'll have complete access to the program. But the form generation Python script prompts you for two boxes. The first is your context. It's the document that we're going to want to edit, revise, analyze, process. And then the second is our question, which describes the processing that we want ChatGPT to perform. Rewrite my press release. Grammar correct my chapter before I submit it. So we're going to go through several different use cases, and this will help you understand the full functionality of what text processing can start to do. So in this case, in the top box, I've specified a little bit of information about myself, where I live, the company I've started, and then a software product that we're going to release called Baxter. That's 1995. And I've asked ChatGPT in my question, create a press release for my product. So we're using both context and a question. And so using this application, we're able to provide much more information. We can cut and paste our information into the form from a Word document. We can type the information into a form, but then we can do the actual text processing. I'm not restricted to just generating text. In this case, I've told ChatGPT about a Python program that I need. I've described that I'm going to be opening a CSV file and then using two different columns. I want to chart the corresponding statistics. And then in my question, I asked ChatGPT, generate the program for me. And it quickly does using Python and gives me my source code. A lot of times the source code is not going to be 100% correct. We still need some programming skills, but it's a great, quick way to get started. But it also shows you that ChatGPT is not restricted to just generating text. In addition, in this question, I've asked it to solve an algebraic expression for X and Y. Within my context, I provided the expressions. We've got two variables, two expressions. We can solve this, and ChatGPT knocks it out for me. I can still generate text using this application. And so I've described my wife and some things about her, and I've asked ChatGPT to generate a poem for me. And so using this, I can continue to cut and paste the poem back into the upper box and say, change this, tweak this, maybe rewrite it as Shakespeare or Walt Whitman and get different takes on it. But it's quick and easy for me to do in this field. Just as I can generate Python code, I can also generate SQL queries. And so I've described the tables that I need ChatGPT to create for me. In my question, I say, generate the SQL to create the three tables I've described. And ChatGPT returns my application those corresponding SQL statements to create the three tables. Just as I can create code, I can also debug code. And so I can quickly cut and paste my code into the context window tell ChatGPT to fix my error, and it quickly identifies the error within my program code, and I can cut and paste the solution that it gives me back into my original code and be off programming again. We talked about the fact that text processing is different than text generation in that we're giving some existing or starting text, and then we're going to do some processing to it. In this case, I've got some content from this book, and I've said, translate the text into Chinese. ChatGPT knows a variety of languages, so quickly coming up with the translation is easy. And then I can take my Chinese text, toss it back in that top box, tell it to translate back to English, and see how it did. A lot of times you'll get called into an interview right at the last minute. And so I've described in my context who we're hiring, what we're hiring for, what the company needs, and then said, generate 5 to 10 interview questions. And ChatGPT quickly does it. So working interactively in this way, it's easy to cut and paste context from a document that I'm working on, and then asking the application to process it for me. And again, this is all being done via the OpenAI and ChatGPT API calls. So let's take a look at the code. And again, I'll be giving you the code completely at the end of the video. And so I'm using TK to create my UI. So it's doing a lot of the processing for me. And you'll find that the majority of the code is actually in building the UI. That's not that uncommon. And so we import the OpenAPI. We import OS because I'm using it to get my OpenAI key from my operating system environment. I could hard code the key into my code, but for security reasons, that's not preferred. And so ideally, you'll use a set command if you're in Windows to set your key to a variable, and then you can retrieve that within your code. No one has access to my API key within my code. The majority of the OpenAI and ChatGPT processing occurs within the submit_query function. And so the first thing I do within that function is to disable the submit button. ChatGPT, as you know, takes a few seconds, sometimes several seconds to get its result. And we don't want the user to think nothing's going on and continually click the submit button. So I disable it. Then I get the question text from my question field. I get the context from the context field. I pass those to ChatGPT 4, and the context I'm passing using the system role. And then my questions coming in from me, and I'm passing that as a question or as a user role. My code continued. I then delete the output contents, so I'm ready for the new output. So if anything was in that form, I delete it. And when everything's done, I put the submit button back to normal so the user can do their next query if they so decide. I told you that you can cut and paste content from a different document into the context field. And so to do that, I have to support a paste event. And so I just grab the contents from the clipboard and then insert it into the corresponding field. When I'm using a UI that's created using TK, there's a thread that's running processing the UI. And when we call OpenAI asynchronously or synchronously, we're going to have to wait. And sometimes that thread will say, I need to be processing, and the thread's over waiting for the OpenAI response. And so when I call OpenAI, I'm calling it from a second thread. And so I'm using the threading package within Python. And you see I have a function that's called call_API in a thread. And so when I get ready to call my submit query function, I'm going to do so using this method. So a second thread is created. I've got one thread handling the UI and the second thread handling my query. After that, I'm just going to build my UI. And so I'm throwing a title on my window. I'm creating a context window. I'm creating a question window. So this is just UI building. A little bit more UI building. And then I finally run the main loop, which starts that thread that's going to process all the UI operations. And then my second thread, if we go up and take a look at the submit button processing, you'll see that it calls that thread using my threaded loop. And so I said you'd have the source code available to you. If you go to my website, class-files.com, there's a file called formGenerationSource.html. You can click on it. You'll get a web page with the complete source code. You can cut and paste that into your application, and you'll be good to go. So what are we going to do next? And so in this case, we were cutting and pasting text into our context window, and it can support a ton of text, but a lot of times we want to do our text processing on an existing file. And so in our next lesson, we'll take a look at how can I open a file, a PDF, maybe a chapter of this book, and I want to grammar check it or convert it to Spanish. And so I can open a PDF, load it into the context file, then ask my question and do my processing. So subscribe to the video, please, and get ready for what's coming next.